I'm Wendy Petrie, and today I have the privilege of chatting to Lewis Clareburt, a champion of New Zealand swimming, holding numerous national records, a 2018 Commonwealth Games medalist, 2019 World Championship medalist, and added to his accolades this year, he became an Olympic swimmer at the Tokyo Olympics, achieving top 10 placings. Not only that, he became a TikTok sensation, racking up millions of views for his epic posts behind the scenes of the Olympics. A big welcome to you, Lewis Clareburt. Hi, Lewis.
Hello, thank you very much for having me.
You are welcome. Well, first of all, coming back from the Olympics and back to life in Wellington after what must have been a huge high, what's that readjustment been like?
Yeah, it was a little bit weird, and I think compared to probably previous Olympics where athletes were coming home, it was a little bit different for us. Obviously, we had to sit in a hotel for 2 weeks, and then obviously we came out of MIQ, and then I had a day of freedom and pretty much went straight back into the nationwide lockdown. So it was a little bit weird. And I think that readjusting was quite difficult because obviously we're surrounded by all these people and then suddenly we're surrounded by no one. So I think it was difficult to, I guess, for all of us mentally to find that, I guess, enjoyment coming back home and finding, that rhythm that we, didn't really have.
Yeah, it sounds really tough. What did you do to get through those 2 weeks?
Well, the biggest thing was I actually was playing PlayStation with a lot of the boys. Was playing, I reckon, at least 6 or 7 hours a day while I was in hotel quarantine. And then obviously we didn't realize that when we came out of hotel quarantine that we'd be going into level 4 lockdown. So I used up pretty much all my PlayStation time that I could handle, because by the end of MIQ, I was sick of PlayStation. So for the next sort of 3 or 4 weeks, I had to figure out something else to keep me entertained.
That's so funny. Talk us through Tokyo overall, what that experience was like. This is the Olympics. I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that. What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really know what to expect going in terms of how big it was going to be. And I sort of tried to treat it as every other competition that I have ever been into. But obviously it's pretty tough. And, there's obviously so many distractions. You're just walking around the village and there's incredible athletes all around you that you see on TV sort of every day. And then to have them, sitting next to you at the food hall or, especially in the Team New Zealand area, because that's where all the New Zealand athletes are, just making chat with them and seeing what they're up to. And I think it was quite funny because there was a few memes that came out of elevator lift chats, and it was quite funny because it was the same chat every single time. It was like, oh, when are you next competing, and how are you going, sort of thing. And it would be the same sort of every time you hopped in the elevator because that's all you sort of talked about when you're in the village. But yeah, like we had an awesome time, and it's so hard to explain like every little part of the Olympics specifically, but like overall, like it was such an awesome experience for sure.
Yeah, what about, because the Olympic Village sounds amazing where you were staying. Were the beds actually cardboard? Seriously?
Yeah, well, the base was cardboard, so it was pretty good. Like we found it all good. Like I guess it was so they could recycle them or something. But so it was quite strong. I think a few of the guys tried breaking them, and I think a few people probably succeeded. But yeah, it was just the mattress. I think it was quite interesting because it was sort of split up into 3 different parts, and there was a soft side and a hard side. And I think that's what blew me up on TikTok on one of those videos about the beds.
Yeah, that was funny. And let's talk about the build up to your races. You were staying in this completely different environment that you're not used to. You're probably eating different food. What was it like for a day for you? Talk us through what you ate, how you slept, what training was like. What did you do every day?
Yeah, so it was quite a quick turnaround from when we landed to when we started racing. So I was on the first day of competition. So we had sort of 3 or 4 days to actually get into a routine, which was quite tough because it's such a busy environment, obviously, that you're trying to find your feet in 3 days is quite difficult. So I guess we would wake up in the morning and walk down to the food hall. It was just across the road from our accommodation, so we were in a pretty sweet spot New Zealand had set us up with. So we just walk across. It would take us a few times to actually find what we wanted to eat because there was so much good food. So you'd probably end up walking probably like a kilometre just around this food hall because it was 2 levels, and we'd usually go to the top level and find what we wanted to eat. You'd walk up, you'd have to put on some plastic gloves, and grab like a plastic tray, which was quite interesting. And then you go and you'd sort of just point at the person to say what you wanted because they didn't really speak English. And yeah, we'd have food, and then we'd usually go straight off to the pool, which was sort of like a 20-minute bus ride. So you sort of get to sit there and listen to music for 20 minutes, just sort of twiddling your fingers while you could. And then you'd go to the pool, do your training session, come back, and then it would be sort of recovery time for the rest of the day, because it sort of was quite a long day, because obviously the only thing you're there for was to race and compete. So you'd swim in the morning, rest during the day, and then swim at night. And we sort of got into a pretty good routine, I guess, throughout the week, but that was sort of like our day. It was pretty chill, to be honest.
Apart from the races, they're probably not quite so chilled.
yeah, race day was definitely difficult for sure. I think especially the way that they did it this year was because your heat would be at night, so you would have to wait all day, sort of brewing on the nerves just to race, at 7 p.m. or 8 p.m. at night. So you'd have all those nerves brewing throughout the day, whereas normally you'd wake up and you'd go straight racing straight away, and then you'd race the final at night. So it would be quite a short day. So it was a little bit weird doing it the other way around, for sure.
Yeah, really weird. And then I guess once you've swum that, you swam amazingly well in those heats, and then you have to somehow go to sleep and then wake up and do the final.
Yeah, that was probably the hardest thing for me, trying to get to sleep. And I know Erica was the same. She, especially after her 400 freestyle heat, she came back and it was pretty late, like 11 p.m. She was only able to get home, and then had to get up that next morning. And she walked in our door that next morning, and it was so funny because she was so excited, but you could see that she was, a little bit tired from not having much sleep. But yeah, it was definitely interesting.
Do you learn to cope with the lack of sleep and the adrenaline and the nerves? I mean, you've been doing it for a few years now. Do you get to cope through those sorts of situations?
Yeah, I heard a psychologist told me a few years ago, I think it was at Commonwealth Games, and they said 1 bad sleep doesn't matter, or even 2 bad sleeps don't really matter. It's like when you get on to 3 or 4 days of not having, great sleep. So I was quite comfortable with knowing that if I didn't have a great sleep on that one night, then I would still be able to perform the next day. But yeah, it's quite difficult, definitely, having to get to sleep. I think I found myself actually watching random YouTube videos at night, especially after my 400 AM heat, to try sort of bring myself back down to reality, and try to get myself to sleep, which worked for me.
What's your race prep like? What do you do just before a big race?
Yeah, so I have a timetable that I stick to. So I work back from the time I sort of have to get on the blocks and race, and it's sort of like work. So before that, I put my race suit on, and then before that, I do my 45 minutes or an hour swimming warm up, and then I do a half an hour stretching before that. So my prehab sort of stuff to get my body ready. And then we sort of turn up to the pool around 2 hours before we get, 2 hours before we race. So we sort of have a little bit of flexibility just in case, say, the bus breaks down or something that wouldn't usually happens. So we have a bit of leeway just to make sure of anything that pops out of the blue. But so we sort of sit around for a couple minutes before we have to do anything, like stretch after we get off the bus.
And do you listen to music, or do you have anything you do that you like your good luck charm, or is there anything you have that really helps you out in these situations?
Yeah, so I think I mean I get nervous, so that's everyone gets nervous. But I think for me, when I get into my routine, like listening to music and doing my stretching and stuff, it sort of distracts me from the nerves. And so yeah, like I listen to music. I have just generally having people around me, just doing normal chit chatter, not anything about swimming is quite nice. If people are there talking to me about swimming, it usually gets into my head. I don't know if it gets into my head, but it makes me think about stuff too much, and I overthink swimming. I'm quite a basic person, I think. I mean, I need a timetable for everything, but generally, I like to keep it quite simple. Yeah.
That's right. So I guess if someone was beside you, like, talking nonstop about something, you think, actually, I just need to walk away. I don't really need that right now. I know that's not how I operate.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
And I usually just throw my headphones in or something, and
Yeah.
they get the message.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and also now you look back on those races, you had some amazing swims. I mean, how do you feel overall it went for you? Because we were just loved watching you back home. It was an incredible race to watch. And so you did an amazing PB in that first heat.
Yeah, I mean, it's actually tough to reflect on it because I was so happy about my heat, and I thought I had so much left in the tank. And then obviously going into the final, it was a completely different story. But I think generally now, I'm content and happy with what I was able to produce. But at the time, it took me a while to sort of understand the scale of what had happened. And yeah, I guess it's tough that when you go into an event, knowing the times that you want to achieve or the splits that you want to achieve, and not being able to sort of produce them when you want to. It's hard, and obviously athlete, you're always tough on yourself when you reflect on things. But yeah, generally I think now looking back on it after sort of a month and a half, I'm happy with my especially my first race, and then obviously not getting what I wanted in that final, but then also being able to get up after I had a pretty crappy few days after that 400 IM final. But I still knew I had that other event, the 200 medley, to get up for. So I got a few messages. I got a message from Moss, I think it was Moss Burmester, and he said that he did his 200 butterfly final in Beijing 2008. And his biggest regret on that Olympic campaign was he didn't let himself or give himself a good opportunity to swim the 100 butterfly fast, which was a few days later. And he told me that, you just got to get over it and make sure that going into that 200 AM or that next race, you're ready to go and you take advantage of it and don't just throw it away. So I think that was probably one of the biggest things I was proud of myself for, was overcoming something that I wasn't happy with. And I guess you can say not proud of, but I'm proud of it now. And then going into that 200 AM and sort of surprising myself and doing a PB in the heat, and then somehow making the final.
Yeah, that was incredible. I mean, I know, you beat yourself up and you look back at the races and think, oh, if only, but you did do so well and you should be so proud. But as a swimmer, you must be always thinking about, the time and the PB you did. And in a way, you have to learn to put whatever happened in that last race aside and think about that next thing. As you say, how did you do that? What advice did Moss give you? What did you do to not think about that last race?
Yeah, it was tough. And I think having sort of Zach as my roommate and the rest of the team sort of around me was quite good, because obviously they didn't have the same feelings as me. It was my race. And so being able to surround myself with the rest of the team and how they were all, they got over my race pretty quick. They didn't really care. So I sort of just, I think, surrounded myself with other people that didn't care about anything. They were just happy to be there. They had their own goals, and I sort of just tried following along with them. And whether they know it or not, that I think they supported me quite a lot. Gary was my coach, obviously he was pretty upset for me as well. So we sort of just tried to turn it around and and get back on the horse. We sort of only swam once a day. So I think I had 2 spare days of doing nothing in between my 400 AM and 200 AM. We only swam once a day, and we tried keeping it super simple and just chill, making sure that, I knew I was fit enough that I didn't have to do too much. But I didn't want to do any hard sets in between because I knew I probably wouldn't mentally be able to finish them. So we just kept it simple and surrounded myself with some pretty awesome people that were there to support me, especially from the New Zealand Olympic Committee. It was awesome just having their support.
Yeah, we were definitely all supporting you back here too. It sounds like the Kiwi spirit was really alive and well. Do you think that, I think that's really important going into an Olympics. You want to have great people around you and a great culture. Do you think that's what we had there?
Yeah, for sure. I think even from previous the Commonwealth Games, our team spirit was like super close, and that was probably because of COVID, to be honest. Because usually you'd be able to leave the village and go, sightseeing and stuff like that. But this year we weren't able to do that. So if you had free time, you would probably be downstairs in the sort of the New Zealand team HQ area, watching and supporting other athletes. And then when athletes returned that had medals, you'd welcome them home with the haka. So it was pretty cool, and I think it definitely made that team super close together and the culture really strong, for sure.
How is it not having crowds and not having your family there?
Yeah, it was interesting because the last few competitions I've had, my family have traveled along with me, and seeing them up in the stands or hearing them in the stands is quite cool, and knowing that they're there to watch you. And to not have that was, a little bit weird, and you felt a little bit alone when you were like going and racing. But I think it also, having no crowds, meant that there was more room for athletes to get up in the stands and support. So a lot of the countries had the rest of their swim teams up in the stands, and they actually filled up quite a fair bit of the stadium. It was a huge stadium, so they were nowhere near filling it up, but one of the stands was pretty packed, and it was actually a pretty nice atmosphere that we had in the pool, especially for the finals.
Great. And so what would you do differently next time if looking ahead, Paris 2024, is there anything you think, oh, I definitely will do that next time, or not do that next time?
Yeah, I'm still trying to reflect on that, on the little things that I would do. I know one tiny little thing that I would do differently is actually bring a little carry-on suitcase with the roller wheels, because you do a lot of walking in the village, from the buses to the food hall, and when you're carrying your swim bag around on your back, it actually gets quite heavy. And we usually have a lot of kit when we're going to race. We have our sort of podium walkout kit and a few pairs of racing togs and a few towels and stuff like that. So it does get quite heavy. So I think one of the tiny little things that I would change is I would buy a little mini roller bag to scoot around on.
Definitely. You don't want any more pressure on your shoulders than you need to have, do you? All right, that sounds awesome. Well done on the Olympic side. Let's talk about big picture and go back to, when you began swimming. When did you start swimming?
I started competing when I was 8 years old, but I think mum and dad threw me in the water when I was like 3 or something.
Great. And was your sister a swimmer?
Yes, I've got 2 sisters, and they were both into swimming. Ali, my older sister, was a medley swimmer as well, so she was sort of, when I was watching swimming, she would be doing her IMs and stuff, and I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. I want to be able to do that.
Oh, that's so cool. And so then, was there ever a point when you went, well, actually, I'm quite good at this? I actually think I'm quite good at this. Did you ever think, I better stick at this? Or how did that all happen?
Yeah, I never actually sort of looked at myself and thought, I can actually do this. Back in 2016, when I made my first ever sort of New Zealand junior team, it was the Junior Pan Pacs, and it was like the pinnacle for that year. Usually I think a lot of the guys these days, they go to the Aussie States short course competition to sort of warm up into international competition. And I never qualified for that little competition. And so I went got thrown into the deep end and went to Hawaii, which was a pretty sweet location for our first ever international competition. And there was the likes of like America, Japan, the Aussies. They all send their top teams, and I got absolutely smoked. And I was like, well,
I don't believe
it. Yeah, so I got sort of exposed to the best junior, swimmers in the world. And I sort of looked at myself and I thought, I want to come to these competitions and I want to be competitive. And I don't want to just I don't want to just be a competitor. And so I guess that was the moment for me that I was like, yeah, I sort of thought to myself, I want to be able to compete on the world stage. And that was my moment to, not that I thought I could do it, but I thought I wanted to do it and I wanted to be the best sort of thing.
And then from then on, did you train harder? Did you tell your coach, or how did it evolve from there?
Yeah, so I sat down with my coach, Gary, and I pretty much said my goals. And I was like, look, this is what I want to do. And he'd actually only just started coaching me at that point and back in 2016. And he was like, sweet, like, that's exactly what I want to do as well. So he was like, I want to go to the Olympics and I want to, be competitive. I want you to be competitive on the world stage. He'd never been to an Olympics before. So he sort of just had to back himself as well. And yeah, that's sort of, that's how the dream sort of sparked. And he pretty much laid out the rules for me, that what I had to do in training. And I followed most of them and probably didn't do a few of them, but yeah, for the most part, I just listened to Gary on what he had to say, because he was the professor at that point, and I had really no idea about anything swimming. So he still knows more than me, and I still have to listen to him. But yeah.
Of course. How important do you think that goal setting is? Because a lot of the younger kids get told to set their goals at the start of the year. How important, looking back for you, do you think that making those goals and looking at them every day, like we hear Michael Phelps did, how important is that?
Yeah, like I guess that's your motivation. That's what gets me up every morning. That's what gets me into the pool every day, knowing that, I want to achieve this. And if I didn't have that, I don't think I would be getting in the pool every day. It's like at the moment, I've just come off, my Olympic campaign, and I'm trying to reset and trying to find those goals again. And we can't really swim at the moment properly, but I don't really have that motivation, that spark to actually get in the water and train properly. And I think once I get those goals and I write them down, or even just have them in my head, that'll get me back in the water, and that will spark my fire again and make me happy to train hard and put everything I have into it.
Because absolutely, and when you say train hard, I mean, swimmers train so hard. You guys are training morning and night. You're doing weights in the gym. You're doing dry land. You're swimming crazy hours. I mean, how hard is that? It must be a point where that pain, it hurts, right? What keeps you going? I mean, there must be ups and downs.
Yeah, I mean, it's a roller coaster for sure. And I think every athlete knows that it's not always going to be the greatest of times. Sometimes I wake up in the morning and the last thing I want to do is actually go to the pool or go to the gym. But I think, surrounding yourself with like-minded people, because swimming is hard and everyone knows that. And it's probably one of the sports, or it's probably one of the reasons why it's not the biggest sport in the world, because you actually have to be committed, and missing a session is like probably, it's not the end of the world, but it means that someone else is 2 hours ahead of you in training, and that's 2 hours of swimming that you haven't done. So I think as a swimmer, you have to accept that it's going to be a grind, and I always say you have to respect the grind and understand what you need to do, and just enjoy it.
Respect the grind. I like it. And was there ever a point where you just did want to give up, or you were at that point where like, I just, I can't do this anymore. I want to go and just have a normal life.
Yeah, all the time.
Good. It's good to know you're a real person.
Yeah. I mean, it's a roller coaster. You go through some pretty awesome highs and then some pretty crazy lows. But when I was younger, I wasn't very competitive in New Zealand, and I didn't enjoy swimming at all, to be honest. So I went through a stage, I think I was pretty young, like I was only like 14, and I sort of moved more towards surf lifesaving and tried giving, poking a finger in that and trying to have a bit of fun, because surf is quite fun and quite a community spirit. And then, yeah, I guess for me it was, I found that fire again and enjoyed surf lifesaving, and I could translate that back to the pool. I surrounded myself with friends, and then sort of just started to enjoy swimming again. And as I started to enjoy it, that's when I got faster, and I won my first national title, I think, when I was 15 or 16, or age group title. And I sort of just started to enjoy it. And then once I enjoyed it, that's when it sort of kicked off.
So what would you say if you had like a young swimmer that said to you, Lewis, help me, I want to be just like you. They're like maybe 16, 17. What would you say to a younger swimmer, male or female? What would be something you could tell them, some advice?
Yeah, I sort of try to stray away from saying the generic stuff when people ask me this. But I think generally, if you're having fun, you're working hard, and especially towards the end of schooling, if you're doing everything you can, or every decision that you make is based on your swimming, especially if you want to be the best, whether that's a life choice, an everyday choice on, say, maybe what you're eating, or what you're drinking, if it's all of those decisions are made about, I guess that we call them performance decisions. And if that decision is made, if you're going to make a decision, it's hard to explain. Yeah, here we go. if that decision is going to make you better at swimming, then do it. But if it's not going to make you better at swimming, then maybe you shouldn't do it. There's always going to be things that, you have your guilty pleasures that you want to do, but you try limit those, and you try just make those small decisions that, are going to make you a better swimmer for sure.
Yeah, it's hard to get that balance, isn't it? Especially when you're a teenager, you've got to have that, work hard, but have a little bit of fun as well. But as you say, I think enjoying it is a big part of it. Speaking of enjoying it, let's talk about TikTok. I mean, you became a TikTok sensation. You had 1 million views at one point. Were you surprised by how that took off?
Yeah, I mean, I had no idea what to expect, to be honest, going in. I really just wanted to show the world about the beds, because there were so many videos going around how bad they were, and people were, saying that they were bad, or I don't know, whatever. And I sort of just wanted to crush them. And so I made a few videos about them, and then they sort of blew up. But my sort of thinking was, when I was watching the Olympics when I was younger, even Rio, we never really got to see what happened at the Olympics. You got to see from the media's perspective and, what they thought of it from the outside, but you never really got to see actually what it's actually like on the inside. And so that's exactly what I wanted to see when I was a kid or watching the Olympics. And so I thought I had a pretty good opportunity to show the world what it was actually like, and what we go through on a day-to-day basis at the Olympics. And that was pretty much what I did. And I think, people genuinely enjoyed having that inside scoop and seeing what it was all about. Yeah.
And did it help you as well, keeping you relaxed before a race? So was it sort of kind of beneficial for you as well?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I posted, I think, one of my videos blew up right before I had like a media conference sort of thing. And it was quite nice because I walked in and they hardly asked me any questions about swimming. It was all about TikTok. And so it was like a distraction away from the pool. and it allowed people to have something else to talk about apart from just swimming.
Yeah.
And, talking about swimming all day, every day isn't actually easy, and, it gets in your head quite a bit. So having TikTok or making little videos for me was my distraction away from the pool.
Oh, that's brilliant. All right. Well, finally, I guess I know it's hard to think about right now. What's next? I mean, are you thinking Paris 2024? We are thinking that for you. Are you thinking that for you?
Yeah, absolutely. As soon as I stepped off the plane from Tokyo, we started thinking about Paris and what we could do and what we could do better. So I definitely am going towards Paris for sure.
Oh, that's so exciting. And how does that look? I mean, 3 years, obviously are you still at university as well?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't study this semester just to give myself a bit of leeway around the Olympics. But I still study part-time just to, guess that's my distraction while I'm home, away from the pool, which was quite nice.
Oh, that's really cool. Well, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your journey. No doubt a huge inspiration to others. Lewis Clareburt, thank you.
Thank you very much for having me.